Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to They Said What? My name is Mr. Rod, and I want to talk to you about one of the greatest annual performances in all of professional sports. And it's not the draft. It's actually the draft coverage, because every single year we sit through weeks and months of people on television, radio, podcasts, social media, and every sports website imaginable telling us what teams are thinking, what teams need, who they love, who they're locked in on, who they secretly are targeting, who they'd be crazy to pass on, and who's absolutely, positively going in the top 10. And every year I sit there and I watch those guys. And when the actual picks start coming in, a whole lot of these same people look shocked, stunned even, confused, almost offended that an actual NFL franchise made a decision based on information that the media never had to begin with. And that's the part that always kind of bothers me. Why is the NFL draft covered like a science exhibition when it's really just a mix of scouting, projection, politics, pressure, gamesmanship, ego, of course, risk management, and flat out guesswork? Because at the end of the day, it's a projection. You're guessing, you're hoping. And maybe an even better question should be why? Why do the absolute loudest and overly certain people covering the draft almost never, no, wait a minute. Not almost, are never held accountable for how often they miss. And then the very next year, those same group of men are sitting up there making the same mistakes year after year. Well, let's just be honest. Draft coverage has become one of the cleanest examples in all of sports of confidence being mistaken for credibility. Now, to be fair, teams actually do prepare for the draft in a serious way. This is not just some casual exercise for them. This is organizations spending months on this. They stack boards. They send out scouts all over the country. They do private interviews. They gather medical information, study tape, test intelligence, check their background history, social media history, study habits, talk to coaches and trainers. They talk to people around the player. They look at scheme fit, positional value, contract timelines, depth charts, future cap issues, locker room culture, and most importantly, long-term organizational identity, because this is an investment, especially now with all the money involved in not just professional sports, but football. That's the real work that's taking place. That's layered work. That's not a fan sitting at home on his couch. Well, we need a corner, so we should take a corner. That's not the same thing. And that's where the public conversation starts to fall apart, because the public is not seeing the same draft that the teams are seeing. The public sees highlights, stats, combine numbers. They see what they put on TV, big game moments. The public hears buzzwords like high motor, elite traits, rising up the boards, and the one I can't stand the most, can't miss. They can't miss. This is crazy. Of course they can miss. Teams are trying to project whether a 21 or 22-year-old can survive the jump to the highest level of football, fit into their building, process NFL complexity, stay healthy, and handle the pressure while they justify their investment. That's a whole different assignment. So when an analyst says this team has to take this guy, what I hear is, well, based on the small piece of the puzzle that I, the analyst, can see, this is what I would do. That's not a fact. That's not insider certainty. That's an outsider. That's outside opinion, dressed up like inside knowledge. And one of the reasons people get so embarrassed on draft night is because they forget something simple, very simple. Teams do not see all players the same way. One team sees upside, another risk. One team sees explosiveness, another poor instincts. One team sees coachable, raw talent. Another sees a player whose college system made him look better than he really is. I can point out a bunch of those kids right now playing in the NFL. Same player, different building, different coaching staff, different culture, different conclusion. And that's why I get tired of hearing draft talk reduced to one lazy phrase over and over again. Team need. This team needs a tackle. This team, a receiver, an edge. Okay, maybe. But NFL teams are not grocery shopping. They're not walking around down aisles checking off a grocery list. They're trying to build a roster for now and the future. They are managing scarcity. They're thinking about premium positions, which can be subjective. They're thinking about the next contract cycle. They're thinking about whether a weak position group can be addressed in free agency, later in this draft or next year's draft. They are thinking about whether the value of a certain pick can even make sense or make a difference. So when media people say they have to go with defense here, I always wonder, according to who? Where'd they get this information? How dare they? According to the fans? According to the mock draft? The 13th mock draft from the 14th person? According to a panel of people who are all mostly recycling the same information from one another. Bad information. Because what often gets presented as certainty is really just a tidy narrative for television. And television loves its tidy narratives. That's the other problem, y'all. The most honest thing an analyst could say in many draft situations is this. There are several real possibilities here. The team has more information than we do. And there are a lot of things that we cannot know from the outside looking in. Now that would be honest. That would be also terrible for TV. It's not dramatic enough. It doesn't drive clicks. It doesn't fuel arguments. It doesn't make people post angry reactions online. What works better for that is this. They have to take this particular player. This would be a massive mistake. There's no way they can pass on him. That's what sells. That's what gets people talking. That's why draft coverage sounds so stronger than it really is. It's designed to sound definitive even when it should sound cautious. And let's just go a step further. Not only is the media working with incomplete information, sometimes the information they do have is deliberately misleading, and they know it. And sometimes they're out there, they're not reporting the news, they're creating the news. But because the draft is basically a smokescreen business, that's what it really is. It's a business. Teams lie, agents leak information, executives posture, scouts can't stop running their mouths, rival teams they try to bait one another. Some organizations put things out there simply because they want another team to move up. Some want to hide their real interest in a player. Some want to create confusion. Some want to drive trade calls. Some even want to protect their own leverage, which I don't really have a problem with. It's a leverage game. If you see something you want, you try to position yourselves to get it. So every time you hear sources say Team X loves player Y, the question should not just be whether it's true. The question should be, who wanted that information out there? And what did they gain from me, the general public, believing it? Now, that's a much smarter way to consume draft coverage. Now, let's do this. Let's go inside the building a little bit deeper, because another thing that gets ignored is the pressure of the draft, trying to get it right. Because not every team enters the draft from the same emotional position, and it's emotional. It's really emotional. Stable franchise with leadership security can afford to think long term. A general manager on the hot seat may draft like his livelihood depends on it, especially on opening day. A coach who needs wins now may push for readiness over upside. An owner, and there's a bunch of them, they may just want the flashy pick. They want their team talked about often. A front office person may want a player while a coaching staff may want another. So again, this is not just football evaluation. This is people under pressure making high stakes decisions while trying to balance the future, the present, and their own personal survival. That matters a lot. And nowhere does human desperation show up more clearly than at the quarterback position. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So many quarterbacks get overdrafted every single year. And they put these young men out there and they're not ready. They're not ready. Is it the quarterback? Is it the system they played in? Is it the coaching? Is it the scheme? What is it? Quarterbacks distort the whole process. Quarterbacks make rational organizations talk themselves into things they would not ordinarily talk themselves into for any other position. A big arm becomes franchise talent. Mobility becomes untapped greatness. Size becomes prototype. He's the prototype player. There's a bunch of those guys who haven't won playing in the NFL right now. A few leadership comments become face of the organization. Oof. I hear that way too often, and it's never true. Because a lot of these players that they suggest are going to be in the league for 10 to 15 to 20 years, especially on one team, it never happens. First of all, the average contract the average player, I should say, never finishes their first contract. They never get to the second contract. And so often, no matter how good the player is at their position, they never finish. I won't say never. They rarely finish their career on the team that drafted them. But that's business. And before long, flaws start getting explained away because the needed quarterback is so overwhelming. The teams start drafting possibility instead of probability. And that's going to happen here in 2026. That's why quarterbacks keep warping the draft conversation. Teams are not just drafting players at that position. They are drafting hope. And a good friend of mine used to tell me all the time, hope is not a very good plan. Hope can make people who are smart stupid. Now, let's dig into my real concern, the pundits. Why do they miss so much? Well, there's a few reasons. First of all, they fall in love with traits. Fast 40 time, big arm, vertical jump, frame, measurables. The combine turns some people into believers so fast that it's almost comical. Secondly, they overreact to momentum. One report says a player is rising up the boards. Another analyst repeats it. Then another builds a whole segment around it. Then social media turns it into a consensus. And suddenly a rumor has become what everybody knows or thinks they know. Third, they often talk about all teams think alike. They don't. Some teams value polish, chase upside. Some care more about character. Some trust the production, which they saw with their very own eyes throughout the college season. Some want scheme versatility. Some prioritize durability. Some are arrogant enough to even think that they can coach up anything. So when pundits say that this is the obvious pick, what they often mean is this is the obvious pick if the team shares their logic. And that's huge, a huge assumption. Now, let's be fair to the mock drafts for a moment. They are not completely baseless or useless. They help the fans understand team needs, project ranges, positional value, and possible scenarios. Yes, they do all of this, but at the end of the day, it's entertainment. But again, let's stop pretending that they are sacred documents. Mock drafts are content products. They fill airtime, especially months out. They create arguments. They keep fans engaged, which is what the NFL wants. So a lot of these pundits are getting fed by the actual NFL and the teams and the executives and so on. They are built to be consumed. And one of the biggest fraudulent phrases surrounding the whole industry is best player available. According to what? Does that mean the best athlete, best tape, upside, floor, fit, long-term value, premium position, medical profile, character? That phrase gets thrown around like it's objective truth, when in reality, it is one of the most objective ideas in all of professional football. And that's why fans get so angry on draft night. They've been led to believe this, and it ends up being that. Fans want the draft to make emotional sense immediately, and it never will. It never will. They want the obvious name, the familiar name that they've been hearing, the heavily mocked name the player social media told them was the answer to their team's needs. So when a team goes in another direction, people say the franchise got cute, got arrogant, or got stupid. Maybe. But maybe the team also had information the public did not have. Maybe the team had information it most certainly did. Maybe the player didn't interview well. The medicals weren't where they thought they wanted him. The coaches didn't believe the fit was right. The board simply fell in a way the public did not anticipate. And that brings me to the part of the whole thing that I think deserves way more attention. Where is the accountability for the people covering the draft? I mean, really, they just say what they want. Seriously? Teams get crushed for bad picks. Is it really a bad pick? General managers get judged. Coaches get blamed. Front offices get mocked for years, especially if the player doesn't pan out. But what if they do? But on the other side of this, what about the draft analysts? Many of them can be loudly wrong over and over and over again and show back up the next year with the exact same level of certainty. And they do. Where's the accountability? It just frustrates me so much. Why? Because nobody keeps a real public scoreboard. It's too much work. And I think that should change. I would love to see a real draft analyst metric. Make them accountable. Not necessarily for them to lose their jobs, but if they're going to run their mouths about this player and that, about how they're so sure that this is going to happen, make them accountable. Not to embarrass people for the sake of it, but to finally separate entertainment from actual insight. They call themselves insiders. Track mock draft accuracy by range. Track player to team connection for accuracy. Track trade prediction accuracy. Track quarterback projections after 2 or 3 years. Find out how many can't miss, so-called can't miss prospects actually miss. Track whether someone consistently understands how certain franchises behave. If that person has even been born yet. Give me, us, the general public, something measurable. Give me something beyond personality and confidence. Because right now, too much of the draft media works like this. Try to be early, loud, definitive. And if you're wrong, do it again or move on before anybody notices. That, my friends, it's not analysis. It's a performance. And that's why I keep coming back to this very point. The teams with the most information are usually the most guarded. And they should be. It's leveraged. It's strategic. It's inside information. that could affect them adversely if it got out. People with the least information are often the most certain. Analysts. That alone should change how people watch the draft coverage. Enjoy it. Use it for context. Use it for entertainment. It is actually entertaining. Use it to learn the names and the possibilities of the players coming into the league. But please, don't confuse a strong delivery with a trustworthy conclusion, because it is not. And if you listen to some of these folks, men and women, they say what they say with conviction. Because in the NFL draft, certainly from the outside, usually has an expiration date. And it tends to expire the moment the commissioner walks up to the podium and makes the draft open. So maybe the real annual draft story is not just which teams miss on players, because some do and some don't. I wouldn't call it a crapshoot. I would just call it looking at the information and then the player doesn't come through. Or did you misread? It's hard to make a decision on how you missed. Maybe it's with experts keep missing on teams. Maybe it's hosts keep pretending that the process is cleaner, simpler, and more predictable than it really is. Maybe it's where people who have built their entire career sounding so certain in a particular space where humility would actually be more honest. That's the conversation I personally want more of. Not just who won the draft on paper, not just whose mock was the closest, because frankly, none of them are outside of the first 5 to 10 players, but none of that. But who actually understands how this machine works and who's really good at it, or at least sounding like they know something. This is, my friends, They Said What? And around here, we don't just listen to the noise. We ask why the noise keeps getting mistaken for truth. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. And if you can, enjoy the 2026 draft.